Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Matt, thank you for taking some time to have a chat with me.
Thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to chat. I know you followed the podcast for a while and you're interested in finance in many ways now. So this is going to be a good chat. As you know, these are more about your story, learning about you and the journey that you went on with money and finance, property, investing, whatever. It goes anywhere you want to go, really. But I guess the first question is to go back to the start and just ask you to set the scene for listeners and viewers is kind of where it began. And was there like anyone that helped guide you towards this understanding of finance and money when you were growing up?
Yeah, for sure. So for me growing up, things were pretty tight as a family. I'm one of 8 kids.
Wow.
So yeah, we grew up in Adelaide. And I guess my parents always taught us great money principles from a very early age. I was taught to save and spend it and give certain portions of my money away. That was sort of instilled in us from a young age. At the age of 12, I got my first job at a bakery. My brother worked at a bakery, and my dad was going to. He used to take teams to Thailand on a mission trip every couple of years, and I saw that growing up, and I really, really wanted to go. And my dad said, "Well, you're going to have to sort of the trip costs $2,000, and so if you want to go, you'll have to raise at least half of that. I'll pay for the other half." And I was like, "Okay, how am I gonna do this?" So I went to my brother and said, "Oh, what's the chances of you getting me a job up at the local bakery?" And he asked around, and I somehow wound up with my first job at 12 years old, earning $4.50 an hour, and
oh wow,
and it was excellent.
You don't look that old, mate. So I feel like question marks over the whether or not you were legally able to work, but that's cool. So starting early, I like it.
Yeah, so I stayed for a year and was able to go on a mission trip to Thailand, and that's sort of where my money journey really started for me. As soon as I got the job at the bakery, my dad introduced me to this program called YNAB, You Need a Budget, and taught me how to use it. And I don't know how, but because I was so young, I actually stuck to it. I don't know how I did. I had other things going on, but yeah, the idea of managing money and yes, being a good steward of money from a very early age was really important to my family, and those values got passed down to me. And I think that trip to Thailand, I was able to save $1,000, and my dad paid for the other half. And going in on that mission trip, really helped my understanding of how the world works and how privileged we are here in Australia. And sort of that was the foundation for me, sort of the way I live my life now and how I give and save and invest my money now. I think a large part of that is due to that foundation of seeing communities in Thailand doing it really tough, and the way kids were being brought up there made me put things into perspective for me.
That's really interesting. So you were around about 12 when you went overseas.
Yeah, 13 in the end. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, right. So can I ask, this might be a very simple question, but what is a mission trip? I'm assuming this is something where you go and you get involved in communities or something like this?
Yeah. So it was through the local church. My dad was a pastor, and he used to take teams of 10 to 15 people over to Thailand for 2 weeks. And we had a contact over there. It was Akar Mercy Home. It was an orphanage where we lived there for 2 weeks, and just hung out with the children. We built rice sheds, we fixed bikes, and just lived with the community, and painted things, and just did general building stuff, whatever needed to be done. We have 10, 15 sets of hands. You can get a lot done in a couple of weeks. So that's what it was about.
Yeah, great. And one of 8, I did not know that before hitting record. That would have been like, I guess another question that falls from this is, you obviously went on this mission trip. Was that something that your parents tried to instill in all of the kids, or was that more just like something that you wanted to take up? And you mentioned something there called "You Need a Budget." Why not? I've heard of it, but I don't know exactly what that is. So I guess I'm just kind of interested. Is that something that your parents kind of instilled on the whole family, or is it more something that you took up?
Yeah, they definitely tried to instill it in the whole family. I think certain members of my family took to it more than others, but I think it was more using the budget program for my parents was more of a necessity rather than because having 8 kids and only on a single income was quite hectic financially. So they needed to know where their money was going, and YNAB, You Need a Budget, really helped understand and give an awareness to where their money was going. So they could give us the lives that we were able to live. We never went without, but they were very wise with their money, my parents and my family growing up. So yeah,
that's great. In terms of other resources that you might have used, even if you go fast forward a bit to later in life, like, or at that time, whatever, were there any like books, resources, you mentioned YNAB, like anything that complemented that or built your knowledge, or things that you read or whatever? I'm just really interested in just how people get information. And even today, like however, like whatever time period you want to take this over, I'm curious.
Yeah, so I think I started getting interested in finance when I started earning a little bit more money. I was a retail manager for a hardware building store for a little while, and I started to have a little bit more money coming in. So that's when I started to pay a little bit more attention, I guess, to where my money was going. And my brother, who's a bit of a mentor in my life, he recommended Barefoot Investor, the classic. So I read that. That was probably the first finance book I read, and that definitely motivated me to start investing and thinking about my money a little bit differently.
How old do you reckon you were when you read that?
Great question. I probably would have been 22, I would say. Yeah, 22 years old. Yeah,
it's a really formative book for a lot of people. Do you listen to podcasts like other than Rask? Like, do you listen to any of our peers or overseas podcasts?
Not really, actually. No. I came across Rask in 2019, and and that's sort of where I started listening to finance podcasts. Yeah, you guys have branched out from, I think it was just the Australian finance podcast back then, and that's what I was listening to. But now it's like the investors podcast, the property podcast. There's so much happening. So
it's definitely grown since then. And I think a lot of our peers have kind of recognized the opportunity to bring more, specific styles of like content and education to different communities. Like there's a lot of property people that need to know about ETFs and investors that need to know about budgeting. So it kind of makes sense to divide it up and have a little bit in each type of show. But yeah. Do you read a lot of books now, or is it not something that is I guess the question is just generally, are you a reader? And if so, do you read finance books?
Yeah, I try to be. So I've read, Morgan Housel, Psychology of Money. That's one of my favorites. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. More recently, we'll listen to on the audiobook through Spotify, Dave Gow's Strong Money Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Those are a few of the finance books I've read. At
risk of Dave listening, Matt, what did you think of his book?
I thought it was excellent. Yeah, really, really good. I think, sort of what I pulled out of that one was the not so much the retire early. He didn't really push that point, but he pushed the financial independence and making sure that you're getting the most out of your time. And making that a conscious decision, I think, is probably the thing that people sort of breeze through life in these jobs where they are just locked in until they retire, basically. And it's like Dave Gow's book, I think, helped me at least ask the question, what do I want to be doing with my time? What's what's going to be the priority for me and the priority for my family.
Yeah, and it's such an easy book to read too. Like the way he writes is very informative and very just not matter of fact, but it's just very purposeful in terms of the way that he writes. I find is great.
Yeah.
And he whenever he appears on the show, it's like the most popular episodes for us. And he's such a great writer as well as he's a presenter. So one of the questions that I had, and you alluded to a job that you previously had, what do you do for an income? Like, what do you do for a career? Are you studying? Are you doing all these? Like, I'm just curious, like, where you're at now.
Yeah, I'm currently studying financial planning, a Bachelor of Business in Financial Planning at uni. I have been in the past, how I got a deposit to buy my first house and started earning a little bit of money was I was a retail manager for a hardware building company in South Australia and a store in New South Wales. So yeah, I had 6 years of working for them. Yeah.
Cool. So when did you start financial planning? I know we had a brief conversation about this when we caught up, but when did you start studying financial planning?
2 years in. Yeah. Coming to the end of my second year now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, that's kind of cool. I was chatting to the team here just a moment ago and saying that you are studying financial planning and we were going to have this chat. And I just think that that's great. Like, hopefully in a little way we played a part in helping influence you to learn more about investing and finance and all that sort of stuff. But I just think that's wonderful. You mentioned that you helped the previous job helped you buy a place. And that's how you and I originally connected for this podcast was you went through the Flint mortgage broking process /Blask. I'm curious, like, why did you decide to buy a house where you did? How did you go about that? Like, how did you know that was the right time? I'm just curious about that property story.
Yeah. So, when I was working for retail, like managing these retail stores, I was just saving up as much money as I possibly could for a deposit. I was single at the time, got married in 2021, and we realized that we wanted to buy a house pretty quickly because we had an okay deposit sitting there ready to go. We rented for the first 6 months, my wife Maddie and I, and then we moved to South Australia and we bought a unit there. That wasn't the initial idea. We were trying to buy a house. This was, end of 2021, start of 2022. So things were just going crazy in terms of pricing. And I think we ended up putting offers in on 15 different properties and we got absolutely smashed on the majority of them.
Wow.
Overbid by, 50, 60, 70 grand on some properties. So it was pretty tough. So we had to, so we were looking for like a 3-bedroom house that we could renovate and do up. And we were like maxing out our borrowing capacity at that as well, with probably some family help and, potential loans just to repay on the side from different family members and stuff. So it was very much like, wow, we're going to be at capacity here. We decided to reevaluate our property brief and go, okay, this isn't working. And if we managed to get a property, what sort of lifestyle would that leave us? We realized that we probably wouldn't have any spare money for anything recreational. So we decided to adjust down our property brief and we looked at units. So that as soon as we started looking at units, a whole new world opened up. It was like, okay, this is more within our budget, and we ended up borrowing well below our capacity, which was so great and such a blessing that we didn't realize at the time because interest rates went up and
imagine if you maxed out and then the rates went up. Like a lot of people listening to this would be in that boat. And
so we're still able to have a decent lifestyle during those periods of increased interest rates, which was great, and that we're very thankful that we did borrow to our capacity and more.
Because I'm guessing like one of the flow-on impacts of that might have been that you probably wouldn't have been able to go back and study. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that, or at least it would have been more difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been out of the question. Having this meant that just my wife's income could handle the repayments, and I do a little bit of casual work on the side while I'm at uni. But yeah, so it's definitely was a wise decision in the end.
Yeah, so I had a friend, actually not a friend, brother-in-law, read Dave Gow's book, and actually I shared the message with Dave. I hope you don't mind, Tom. I shared it with him, and he said to me, he's like, it just made me reconsider like all of this stuff. Like most people, when they go into a borrowing power calculator, like they're like, oh, I'm going to buy a house. What's the maximum I can get? That's like the default response. And obviously the bank, it says it in the name, like borrowing power calculator. So it's going to give you like the maximum amount. But that is definitely not what's right for most people. And if you sit back and you think about like that financial independence thing, a lot of people's definitions of that vary, right? And it changes over time. And like you mentioned, Dave's kind of one of the emphasizing points that he has is like living the life that you want and not being stuck in the job. If you did go to your maximum, mate, that may have been the case. You might have had to have kept working. Study may have taken 8 years part-time, that kind of thing, rather than doing what you've done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How about now that you've got that place? Like, what are you thinking about looking forward? Like, are you going to do something with the property? Well, actually, one question I might ask, if you did change your property brief, how did you change it so that it went from like a house to a unit and you kind of got what you wanted, if that makes sense? Like, what were you looking for? And what are the key things that you looked for?
Yeah, great question. I guess we were so focused on the 3-bedroom house that we had sacrificed everything else. So like kitchen is in terrible condition. That's okay. We can renovate that down the track. The deck or whatever, we sacrificed a lot of other things just for that narrow scope of having a standalone 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
So yeah, by just going, okay, but what if we were to look at a unit in a block of units in a strata? What would that look like? And yeah, it was sad that we had to give up on that dream because I wanted a shed. I enjoy woodworking and all that sort of stuff, so I had to give up on that. But yeah, just at the time we just changed that just in the property search in our real estate. We're like 2-bedroom units, and then my brother, a whole new world opened up to us. So then my brother was actually and his wife, they were selling their unit at the time. Which we hadn't thought of before because we were like, oh, we're not looking for a unit. But then we were like, oh, hang on, maybe we could look at that. So we ended up looking and they had just renovated it, ready to sell. And so it was all ready to move in under our budget. And we were like, we know that it was a great location and they had looked after it previously. We knew all so we were very lucky in that way. We were just able to buy off them.
Oh, wow. That's okay. Cool. I didn't know that. So, in that situation, you probably wouldn't need a real estate agent. You just use like a solicitor or a conveyancer to help you manage the transition, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it saved them on fees, and then it saved us a little bit as well. So yeah,
yeah,
bit
cool.
unique. Yeah,
yeah, that's so great. And then one of the things that I like to ask people when they come on and share their journey is also like where you're at now in terms of like the tools and the resources that you use now. And just for anyone that's watching this or listening back, it's not necessarily about recommendations. It's not what we're trying to do. I'm just curious how people manage their money. Like what, maybe you use apps, maybe you use tools, maybe you use certain brokerage accounts, maybe you use certain banks. I'm just curious about how you manage your financial system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great question. Anyone who knows me knows I love to talk about money and specifically YNAB, you need a budget. Like I said before earlier, that I've been using it since I was 12 years old. So it's sort of ingrained in what I do with my money. One of my wife and I's first dates were, I showed her how to use the program. Didn't go through anything too crazy, but wouldn't recommend that as a second date. So we sort of use a bit of my wife and I, Maddie, we use a combination of Barefoot and YNAB. So we have a Barefoot budget date night every month, at the start of every month, where we go out to dinner, and it probably looks really bad from everyone else's angle. We whip out our phones for the first 10 minutes and we're just on our phones for the first 10, 15 minutes of our date. And how you need a budget works is you work a month ahead. So you're allocating money that you earned last month into that current month. So at the start of September, say, we allocate all the money that we earned from the previous month, and we've got goals and different budget categories set up that we've spoken about previously. So yeah, we sort of we go through that process of assigning our money on that date every month. And so we both know where all our money is going to be going, and we can have any conversations of upcoming expenses, or maybe we've achieved that goal, so we tick that one off and we introduce a new one, whether or not that's saving for investing or a deposit on a house or holiday. We can decide. So that regular touch point for us works amazing. And we never fight about money. We both know where our money is and what it's doing all the time. So yeah, big advocate for YNAB, and yeah, what they can do.
Yeah. So I'm going to just look this up on my phone because I've heard of it, but I don't know enough about it. So is it like an app, or is it just like a system that you would like use, like the Barefoot, something that you follow?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an app, and but it's very flexible in terms of how you set up your categories, and so I kind of use a hybrid model because I have different categories. I think the Barefoot model is probably it's been a while since I've read it, but it's like percentages of your income is saving and spending, and you have different buckets for different things, and I sort of use a bit of a hybrid model of that in my budget. Yeah
Cool. And I'm sure the date nights are a bit of fun. So you spend the first 10 minutes, you sit down and you kind of just like allocate for the month ahead, and then you can both see what each other are doing. I'm assuming that's kind of like one of the things.
Yeah, so we have a combined bank account, so all our transactions and all our categories are all linked to that one bank account, and feeds directly in through YNAB. So yeah, we can go back and see. It's really an awareness of where our money's going. So as we're allocating money, you can check what you spent last month. So one of the big ones for us is like restaurants or takeout. You can click on that category and go, this is what, like, it shows you what you spent last month and what your average spend is for that category. And we can make a decision to go a proactive decision, or probably reactive, but proactive for the future for our money, and go, are we okay with spending $400 last month on restaurants, or would that money being better used elsewhere? What are our priorities? And that's something where every month we're making decisions on whether or not we're okay with our money being spent in this way. And I'm a big advocate for it, because I think when I was, before I got married, I was earning decent money, and there was a period of time where I thought everything was going really well. And it was about June or July, and I decided to run a report in my budget, and from January to June for that first 6 months, just to see how, like, it was a net income report, just to see how things were tracking. And I thought I was doing really well, but what this report told me was that I'd actually, for that period of time, I'd actually only made $47 in terms of my income and expenses. The net income was $47. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I'm not okay with that. So I was able to look at some categories and go, yeah, wow, it's certain categories are the main culprits here. What can I do to trim down or adjust my lifestyle slightly differently, so that I can be spending more within my priorities and where I want my money to be going. And then I ran a report 6 months later, so for that following 6 months. So the first 6 months I had $47 was how much I was left with. And after the following 6 months, after making these small adjustments, I'd saved 10 grand. And that was without any salary increase or anything. It was just adjusting my spending habits. And so from that moment, I was like, man, having an awareness of what your money is doing is actually really important.
Yeah, for sure it is. That's wonderful. And that's like, a lot of people don't take the time to actually do that. And then probably just a lot of people just feel bad about things. I think they can earn more to overcome the bad, let's say, savings hygiene or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So now let's fast forward a bit. You're studying and you've got a property in Adelaide and your partner's working. What does the future look like for you guys? Are you guys focused like if we think about those long-term goals or those medium-term goals, does that look like another property for you? Does it look like something else? Because I mean, you've probably got a bit of a learning advantage here, given that you're studying financial planning at the same time as thinking about this stuff. But what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we've recently moved from South Australia to New South Wales to be closer with my wife's family, and we're renting out our unit in Adelaide, and we're saving for a deposit to buy here in Newcastle. So I guess for us, with me at uni and my wife is the only one working right now. I'm doing a casual job, but not earning much. So we don't really have the borrowing capacity to be able to take out another loan. So we've currently bought a caravan, and we're renovating that at the moment, and it's living in the back of my wife's family's house. So they're good enough to let us park it at the back, and we're just paying utilities. So the plan is just to live in that while I'm at uni, and then until I get a full-time job and we're both on a double income, we can hopefully then buy a house. So I guess that's sort of in the next couple of years. That's the goals we're working towards, is just saving like crazy so that we can buy another house.
Does that make you, Matt, does that make you a rent vestor?
Yeah, well, something like that, you could say, yeah. Although I'm not actually paying, I'm not really paying rent where I am, but just utilities.
Yeah, but that's kind of the thing. Well, you probably couldn't have afforded at least a house maybe where you wanted to right now, so you had to make that trade-off. It sounds like you've made a few trade-offs, and the key thing is like getting the most from your money, but also from how does that align with your long-term goals. I think like by the sounds of it, the relationship that you and your partner have and the openness that you have towards talking about money is like a superpower. Like it's totally a superpower, mate. You might not think it might be normal for you, but from most people that I speak to, it's like most of the guys can't talk about budgeting, and they're only interested in like crypto or the next hot stock or an investment property or something like this. No offense, fellas. And then the ladies are often, like if I'm taking like the pessimistic side here, the ladies are often in denial about spending or about like sticking their head in the sand about investing. But then there's like this subsection of people in the population that kind of come together with healthy money habits and a respect for one another's, strengths and weaknesses, and work on that together. But it sounds like the two of you together have like joined forces in a really good way. Can I ask a question on this? Your partner, has she read the Barefoot book, or when you were introducing her to YNAB, was she on board already with that type of thing, or did that take a bit of, you working with her on that type of stuff?
No. Yeah. She had always been really good with money, just like just like she would just save and not want to spend anything, or just before we met, she was in Mexico, living in Mexico for a year, where she had to live on very little, and so she definitely had those sort of principles growing up as well, which are very lucky.
Very lucky indeed. I've got maybe just a couple more questions for you. One is, other than Flint, which was previously known as Blask, and our full disclosure is our trusted mortgage broking partner at Rask. Other than them, have you used anyone else to like along your journey, like financial planner,
accountant,
like anyone that like is in your kind of like A team, so to speak?
Yeah. Not really. I've used an accountant a couple of times before to do tax returns, but I think as I've grown more interested in finance, I've just been doing my tax returns myself because I want to learn how to do it and understand how it all works. But yeah, I refinanced. Probably important to say, I refinanced through Flint. I didn't go with them from the very beginning. I don't think I actually knew about them at the time. Yeah, so I went with another mortgage broker at the start to get our home loan. And then, yeah, listening to the podcast, Rask podcasts, and hearing about all these ways that you could save and offset accounts and things. I was like, oh, we currently don't have any of that. So yeah, I had to refinance through. Through Black at the time, but yeah, with Flint now.
Yeah,
they've been great. Yeah,
I think that one of the things that's in your corner is that you're learning about finance and you want to take it on. A lot of people do want to outsource, and finding trusted partners is hard, whether it's mortgage broking or accounting or financial planning or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
As I've gone on, I've definitely leveraged relationships more than ever. Like I was always just like, it's off the shelf product, I can do it myself kind of thing. But now it's more relationship based.
Yeah.
So I've got one final question is like, what's one thing that you would have done differently if you had the chance? You know that I like to ask this question at the end of podcasts in a different way, where I say, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, but given that we're just talking about you and your journey, if you could have done one thing differently over this period, what would it have been?
And yeah, I was thinking about this, and so I started working at 12 years old, and this gave me an incredible work ethic, and I learned how to work hard with honesty and integrity. That those sort of things at a very young age, that was excellent to sort of take from that. However, this came with sacrifices as well, like not going fishing with my mates or hanging out with friends on a Saturday or playing club sport because I was always working. Looking back now, I feel sad for the younger me that I missed those opportunities at such a young age. And it's hard to say because it made me the man I am today. And I'm not too sure I would do it any differently if I was to go back. But I might have toned it down a little bit because, yeah, for young me now, not having those experiences, yeah, it's a bit sad. So yeah, moderation, I'd probably say maybe not working at such a young age, or at least not going as hard as I did.
Yeah, it's so difficult to know though at the time because, we talk about like the regret minimization framework, like, if you cast your mind forward, where would you want to be? And a lot of people do just think, well, I want money because money gives me choices and it gives me this and this and this. And I think if we all live life and we build regrets, and I think that part of what makes us human. And a lot of people would love to be in a situation where they oversaved rather than undersaved for certain things. And so I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, but I also take your point because it's hard to strike a balance, particularly when you're younger and you're really impressionable, or you feel like some things are more important than others. Like we've had Matt from Aussie Firebug on the show, who I'm sure you're familiar with if you're reading Dave Gow's book and that. And he says the same thing. Like, you just wish he went on that Europe trip, and sure, he might have reached financial independence in early 30s or whatever Matt did, but what was the cost of that? It's about that healthy balance and what's right for individuals. But it sounds like you do have that healthy balance, mate, because you've got a partner that you can bounce ideas off, which is more than a lot of people can say. So that's something that's truly wonderful. And the other thing that I'll take from this is definitely the idea of the trade-offs that you've had to make and how you've done that and remained so positive along the way. And if there are any financial planners listening to this that might think, hey, this guy sounds pretty promising, I wonder if he's open to a job. I'm just speaking for you here, Matt, but get in contact with Matt particularly if you're on the coast in New South Wales. But mate, this has been heaps of fun. So thank you for coming on here and sharing your story with so many thousands of people. It would be inspiring to a lot of people to hear the journey that you've been on. So once again, mate, thanks for joining me.
Privilege, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on on business, finance, investing, and so much more.